The morning heat in Macon, Georgia felt like it was clinging to everything. Cars, porches, even Derrick Rowe's skin as he drove down Pine Street. He had a grocery bag riding shotgun, filled with his mom's favorites, milk, bread, and the lemon cookies she always pretended not to eat in one sitting. It was supposed to be a calm weekend, quiet, familiar, something to reset his mind after months of non-stop work in Seattle. But then he noticed the patrol car in his mirror, following too long, keeping just the right distance to make the air inside his rental grow tight. He turned on his blinker, hoping the cruiser would finally pass. It didn't. The lights flared. The siren chirped once. Derrick sighed and pulled over, already knowing the script. He just didn't know how different this chapter would be. Out stepped Officer Karen Delacroix, mid-40s, stiff posture, mirrored sunglasses, and the kind of walk that belonged to someone who'd never once questioned her own authority. She asked for his license and registration with a voice sharp enough to cut through steel. Derrick kept his hands visible as he moved slowly, deliberately, handing over the documents. As soon as she asked why he was in this part of town, he knew where this was going. "My mother lives 2 blocks away," he said. She raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. And then, "Step out of the vehicle." Derrick blinked. "I'm sorry." "Step out." He complied, hands visible, body calm, but confusion began creeping into his chest like a slow-burning fuse. "You fit the description of a robbery suspect," she said, circling him like he was a stray dog she wasn't sure she wanted to touch. Derrick told her he'd been at his mother's house all morning. She ignored it, called for backup. And when Derrick dared to ask for his rights, she shoved him against the hood so hard it rattled. "Hands now." He wasn't angry, not at first. What he felt was disappointment, the type that sinks into your ribs because you've seen this scene play out too many times, and you always hope maybe this time, maybe this officer won't be like the others. Backup arrived. A younger officer named Hernandez hesitated when he heard Karen's version, but stayed silent. Derrick was cuffed and shoved into the back of her cruiser. His phone buzzed uselessly in his pocket, probably his mom looking for him. His groceries were melting under the sun, and for the first time in years, Derrick felt truly, painfully tired of proving himself, of smiling through suspicion, of being rewritten as someone he wasn't. The station was cold, sterile, full of forms Karen filled out like she'd written them 100 times before. Non-compliant, raised voice, threatening posture. None of it true, but all of it familiar. They kept Derrick overnight. No phone call, no explanation, just a buzzing fluorescent light, a hard bench, and too much time to think. When a different officer finally came in the next morning to give him his charges, obstruction of justice and resisting arrest, Derrick stared at him with an exhaustion too heavy to hide. "I didn't resist. I didn't obstruct anything," he whispered. The officer avoided his eyes. When they finally gave him one phone call, Derrick reached out to the only person he trusted with something this twisted. Marvin Bexley, an old law school friend turned criminal defense attorney. Marvin didn't hesitate. "Sit tight, I'm coming." That afternoon, Marvin walked into the station like a man who'd won cases bigger than the room itself. Karen hated him instantly. He demanded the arrest footage. She refused. He smirked. She hated that even more. Derrick was released on bail shortly after, and as Karen watched him walk out with Marvin beside him, calm, composed, and unbroken, something in her stomach twisted. She opened her laptop that night, rewatched the dash cam footage, and paused on the moment she shoved him. She stared at her own reflection in the screen. Then she shut it and walked away. But Derrick wasn't walking away. At Marvin's office, they dug through every complaint ever filed against Officer Delacroix. Patterns emerged, familiar names, familiar pain. 2 sealed complaints, 1 dismissed. All black men, all with similar stories. And then came Raina Blount, a courthouse clerk with a quiet fire in her eyes. She remembered everything, every time Karen had targeted people who looked like Derrick. She had copies, dates, names, records everyone else pretended to misplace. "I should have spoken up years ago," she said. "I'm done staying quiet." Meanwhile, Karen felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. Her coworkers avoided her. Hernandez wouldn't even meet her eyes. She was called into her supervisor's office and told she'd be placed on restricted duty. Her brother called and asked the question she didn't want to hear. "Karen, are you telling the truth?" Instead of answering, she hung up. The town buzzed. Barbershops argued. Churches whispered. People came forward. 3 more men with nearly identical stories. 1 retired teacher, 1 warehouse worker, 1 man who'd stayed silent for a decade. Silence was crumbling everywhere, but in Karen's apartment, where she sat in the dark, convincing herself she was the victim. But the truth didn't need her permission anymore. The preliminary hearing brought crowds. Derrick sat calm, hands folded, while Karen kept her shoulders rigid, as though posture alone could save her. When the dashcam footage played, the courtroom fell silent. They watched her shove Derrick without cause. They watched him stay calm. They watched her escalate the situation because she could, because she always had, because no one had ever held her accountable before. The judge asked if Derrick had raised his voice or threatened her. Karen looked at him, and for the first time, the power imbalance was gone. "No," she whispered. Testimonies followed. Wallace, the retired teacher, the teenager from years back, now grown. Raina sat in the back watching every second. Karen broke on the stand, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet collapse of a story she could no longer pretend was true. The judge ruled for a full trial. It didn't take long. Once the footage went public, the country noticed. Karen became a symbol of everything wrong in small-town policing. The department distanced itself. The mayor launched reviews, and Karen was suspended without pay. During the final verdict, Karen sat in plain clothes. No badge, no uniform, just a woman stripped of everything she'd used to make herself feel important. She was found guilty of misconduct and falsifying a police report. No jail time, but she lost her badge forever. Barred from law enforcement, reputation scorched. When she left the courthouse, the crowd parted, not out of respect, but out of recognition. Everyone knew who she was now and what she'd done. Derrick didn't celebrate. He just stepped outside, exhaled, and let the weight start to lift. Back at his mother's house, he sat on the porch with a chipped coffee mug, finally allowing himself to feel something like relief, but he knew it wasn't over. Justice didn't end with a guilty verdict, so he pushed further. He attended city council meetings, filed public records suits, started community workshops on Tuesday nights, teaching people their rights, teaching them how to speak up, teaching them what silence costs. People listened. Teenagers, elderly folks, even officers in plain clothes sitting quietly in the back. One night, a 17-year-old asked, "Did you ever want to give up?" Derrick smiled sadly. "Yeah, but if I had, she'd still have her badge, and I'd still be wondering what would have happened if I spoke up." And somewhere 2 towns over, Karen Delacroix watched one of his workshops on YouTube. Alone, anonymous. No badge, no applause, just a woman sitting in a quiet apartment with a truth she could no longer outrun. No redemption speech, no dramatic apology, just silence. And for once, it wasn't Derrick's silence. It was hers. Because in Macon, people stopped whispering. Kids learned their rights. The community began standing together instead of standing down. and Derrick finally understood the truth he'd been living toward his whole life. The moment you speak up, the moment your voice trembles but rises anyway, is the moment someone else's power starts to fall. If you've ever been told to stay quiet, to let it go, or to keep your head down, don't. Your story matters. Someone needs to hear it, and one voice, just one, can change everything.